Hello everyone! I hope that you're all staying safe and practicing your social distancing during this time, as the COVID-19 outbreak still continues. As many of you may know, I'm a really big tabletop role-playing guy, and I'm into Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. Some of you may also know that my father is a real handyman, and he tends to do things such as build chicken coops and tables. So I decided, since I had the extra time, I'd ask my father to help me build a project I've always wanted to do. And that's build a tabletop role-playing table for Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. And what do you know? It was an awesome experience. So sit back, and I hope you guys enjoy as I take you through the process with my father, a couple friends, and myself as we build this epic Dungeons & Dragons table. As you can see, we started off by purchasing a piece of plywood from Lowe's. We draw out the dimensions that we thought would be perfect for Dungeons & Dragons, as we needed DM side and player sides. So, we take and draw our dimensions, and as you can see here, we decided that 8 inches for all the player sides would be sufficient, as it's a big enough room for a dinner plate. And 16 inches would be enough room for the DM. So we take a circular saw, we get a straight edge, and my father shows me here how to take the plunge and use a circular saw. I'm taking notes and making sure that I don't mess it up whenever it's my turn. So here you can see, showing me how to do it, and I take the plunge and boom, success! No crash and burn. We take an extender for the straight edge, and I take the circular saw and go all the way to the edge. Here's a little bit of extra close-up footage as I take a circular saw, and here you can see me do the magic of cutting a table. Boom. So epic. Here we take a jack saw and I cut into the corners as my father shows me how to do it correctly, making sure to free up all the corners. And the reason we did this was so that way the circular saw didn't go over. And as I finish up the last side, you can see how we remove the center of the table. Now we're stuck with just the edges, and we plan on doing something to make sure the players can see all the dice, the miniatures, and the terrain inside of the table for later. So, that being said, as a woodworker, you gotta sand. And the next thing I'm gonna do is sand down the tops, the inside, the outside, and the bottom of this table. Moving on, I'm getting ready to build the drop down. So I purchased some 1x4s from Lowe's, and I cut them to the dimensions of the inside. As you can see here, we're getting ready to place and dry fit, as we flip the table over, the innermost 1x4 long side. So here we take the plank. We noticed that there was a little bit of warping, and we wanted to make sure that we had the best chance to have a straight edge. So what we did was we kind of worked around it, and we got a bunch of clamps to make sure the wood would look good on the inside of the drop down. So, getting my sander, I worked all the edges. As I am still a new woodworker, I wanted to make sure that all the adhesive protective surface of the wood was completely removed, so that way it would look good and feel good by the end. I'm putting the clamps back on to keep the wood sturdy, and we're getting for the next fun part, which is putting biscuits to protect the wood and keep it sturdy when we build it. So, we draw the lines of where we think we're going to put the biscuits. And this is going to make sure this table stays a lot more sturdy. As you see, we're marking these spots off. Remove the clamps and the planks themselves, and I take the tool and make little holes into the side of the table. With that being said, I do the same thing for the planks, making sure we put it right where the holes are, where we drew the lines. We blow the sawdust out of the holes. These are the biscuits, little pieces of wood. Place the little pieces of wood inside those little lines and holes. And the next fun part is putting glue on them. So I put glue down on the biscuits. Make sure we put glue all along the side of the wood. And this is going to keep the wood and the planks and the plywood connected a lot more in secure ways, as there's a piece of wood connecting them together. We put them together, clamp them together, and I got some 1.5-inch brad nails to make sure that they were even more reinforced and connected throughout the build. We avoid using 2-inch brad nails because we didn't want to blow out on the backside. And that's what you can see me checking there. And boom, that is the first drop down. We're getting super excited. As you can see, I continue the process here, making sure to drill holes, put the biscuits in there, and put the brad nails inside to secure it later. Here I continue the process on both sides, make sure to glue all the sides, and put the biscuits in as well. I continued and got some longer clamps to make sure the DM side fit, and boom, it looks awesome. Although there was a mistake, and you can see here I'm brad nailing them in right now, and I kind of forgot about one thing, and that was gluing and brad nailing the bottom side. So a day had passed and the wood kind of warped a little bit, which was kind of, in hindsight, not a very great thing, as it really messed with the build a whole lot. So I got some clamps and glued and brad nailed them in, but after a while it still just wasn't perfectly lined up, and this caused a little bit of problems as I had to sand down with some pretty hard grit sandpaper later down the line. So you can see I'm moving on to cutting out the inside of the table. This is the drop down. So I took a piece of pencil, drew out the inside of the table, and I'm now using a circular saw to cut out the inside to the perfect dimension that it needs to be. And I take some brad nails, and boom, looks epic. So again, sanding. I wanted to sand the top part because we had a little bit of gaps on the top side, and I wanted to get those covered up with some wood putty. So the next thing I did was grab some wood putty that were going to be the color closest to the stain that we wanted to get, and sandpaper. We would mix the the sawdust, sorry, and mix the wood putty together to conceal those really large gaps. Here you can see I went out and bought some 1x8s, and these 1x8s are going to be the supports for underneath the table. This is in case a small child or a really big miniature would be on the table and we were worried it would bow or warp the table. So here I am getting the glue on the 1x8s and marking down where I want them to go, and then taking some brad nails about a 1/2 inch or an inch and putting them into the boards. Here I decided to start working on the railing. This is another really important part about building the table, as the railings keep the whole table from bowing over time. So I measure out in about 1 inch and cut out the dimensions of a 1x3 that I got from Lowe's. I start gluing the bottom parts of the railing, clamping them down, and start brad nailing about 1.5 inch brad nail into the sides of the plank. As you can see here, it's about to rain, so boom, that's what it looked like for the day. Next day I woke up and decided to continue the process for the other side. As you can see, I've already glued and now I'm nail gunning them in on the other side. I cut out some additional 1x3s and dry fit them to both sides. The next step, of course, is to glue them and also use a little bit of brad nails to keep them in place. So here they are done. The next day, I added some wood putty to conceal the holes, and after that, let the wood putty dry and sand down the excess. This left me with the pre-staining. So I'm moving on to pre-staining the wood and then later staining it the color of wood we would like it to be. This was just the bottom side of the table, as I wanted to make sure I knew how to stain before I moved to the top side. This is my fiance Gabby, and you can see here we are pre-staining it and moving on to staining it later on. Here we're staining the top, and the thing about staining is you can go with or against the grain, but I didn't know that at the time and didn't know how much excess stain you could have on there. And boom, that's the end. That's the first coat of stain, and it looks amazing. I was really proud about this, and I was so excited to finish the build. Decided to move on the next day and put on a additional coat of stain. One thing I realized was you don't want to have any sticky coating on the next day. You want to wait till it's completely dry. And you want to see, as you can see here, I'm removing the additional excess stain. A lot of different people might not know, but you have to remove the additional stain or else it's going to stay sticky for a couple of days after. And this is my third and final stain here. As you can see, I'm getting a lot more comfortable staining the table as it moved a lot faster. And the next day, I called my good friend Clayton, who's one of my players, and I decided to put some cup holders into the table along with wiring receptacles. Which, great news, Clayton is actually an electrician. So we put in the cup holders, and Clayton starts teaching me how to wire up some receptacles along with daisy chaining along the side. So I start drilling in the boxes. I use outdoor boxes just in case. And you can see here he's showing me exactly how to daisy chain these receptacles up from each other. So I'm taking notes very diligently here. And I start doing it a little bit by myself, and by the end of this, he had to go home for some reason, and I ended up daisy chaining, to my surprise, perfectly 2 more receptacles by myself. So, great job, Clayton. You're an amazing teacher. You should be proud of yourself, as even someone like me can do some electrical work. So, I went around, tested all the receptacles, they all worked, and I decided to drill in 1/2-inch screws and make sure that the wiring wouldn't dangle down beneath the table. This way for a safety issue. I drilled a small hole for a little surprise that I had at the end and began working on the legs. I cut all the legs down to about 30 inches, so that way the table would be about 30 inches tall, which is roughly about the size of the dinner table. So you can see I've moved on to staining the legs, and I'm getting so excited by this point. As I continue to stain the legs, I decided to get some polyurethane finish and spray the table. This is a final protective coat to make sure that if you were to leave a cold drink, it wouldn't damage the table. I apply the second stain on the legs, and I'm getting ready for my next surprise step. And that is putting some lights, specifically LED lights, onto the table. I wanted to add some extra mooding and dynamic at the table, and I thought lights would be a perfect way to add that element. So you can see my father's helping me here, and I found out that they had some different colors, and I got real excited. The next day, I moved on to make sure I drilled in the legs. This was a real fun process, but the legs scared me the most because I didn't think that I had them completely right. You can see here, we're about to practice and flip it over. And what do you know? Boom. Hey, it's level. And it's pretty sturdy. So, to my surprise, I didn't get the legs wrong at all. And I felt really happy about that. And right here, you can see I actually went out and bought a poker playing mat. So that way we can have a little bit more games on here, because we like to play some poker here. As you can see, the lights are in motion, and dang, it looks awesome. You can see the cup holders work, and I've got a little remote to change the lights from wherever I need to in the room. This is going to add a whole lot of dynamics to the table, and I am so excited. Dang, that looks like a disco. It's so awesome. So, moving on, you can also see one cool additional feature of this is there's a lighting dim setting. So if it was really dramatic or the lighting's too bright, I can dim it down, or if we're playing in the dark, I can turn them up. And boom, check out this. This is what it would look like in the dark with the extra lighting. All the terrain out, the players are gonna love it. And you can see here just how dynamic lighting will work at the table. And man, I am so excited and proud about this build. Here's a final picture of what the table looks like right now. And I'm so excited and proud about this build. Really, really happy about this extra downtime that I've had and what I've been able to accomplish, not only as a woodworker and a DM, but as a musician as well. I've had a ton of time on my hand to practice and do a lot of soul seeking. So if you guys really enjoyed the process that we had for this video, please think about liking and subscribing. Comment down below if you think that there was something that you would do differently. I know a lot of other people have made Dungeons & Dragons or role-playing tabletop tables already, and people have done different things, but this was my first build. I'm really excited and proud about it, so hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.